and welcome again to this edition of AA Connect, the podcast brought to you by the Automobile Association of South Africa. We address issues of mobility and safety and security in these podcasts, and we hope that the information you get from these podcasts is useful to you and informative. You can catch us on all our social media platforms, Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, and Instagram, and we do post quite often on all of those sites. So if there's anything about the AA that you'd like to see or want to know about, you can visit any one of those social media platforms, or you could visit our main website at www.co.za. My name is Leighton Beard. I'm the PR manager at the AA, and I host these AA Connect podcasts. And joining me today, I've got two very important guests. Well, one very important guest and the CEO of the AA, Willem Groenewald. And the important guest that we have with us today is Mr. Mike Finch, who is the editor-in-chief of Runner's World magazine and Bicycling magazine. Did I get that right, Mike? Bicycling magazine and Runner's World magazine. So tell us a little bit about...
two jobs.
Yeah, you got two jobs. I hope they pay you twice, Mike.
I pay myself. We actually are the publishers of the magazine, so the business is mine. So I have to decide how much I pay myself, and I'm still not sure I pay myself enough.
I think that's a perennial problem. Mike, talk to us about the magazines. I think they're very niche-oriented. Obviously, you're looking at runners and you're looking at cyclists, but very specific magazines, right? I mean, tell us a little bit about how these magazines, developed over a period of time, why you started them, and what the uptake of those mags is.
Well, both Runner's World and Bicycling are magazines that are licensed magazines from our parent company in the States. Hearst Magazines are the owners of the titles, and we license them from them. And Runner's World has been around since 1992. I've been the editor of Runner's World since 2000, so it feels 2 decades later I'm still doing it. And I've been the editor of Bicycling since 2006. So it's been a number of years, been involved in both of them, and we're making some changes on the magazines now. We're probably moving some of the editorial roles onto different people. I think there's some fresh air needed. So as of the next edition, there's a new editor for Runner's World coming in, and we're going to be probably appointing a new editor on Bicycling. But they're very much magazines that fit into the lifestyle of cyclists. We like to believe that if you're a cyclist or a runner, the only magazine you need to read is either Bicycling or Runner's World, because I think we kind of cover not only the passion of the sport, but also, our service journalism is very important to us. So whenever we do something in the magazine, it's always underpinned by the authority of an expert. I feel that whatever we're representing is, something that you can believe in and isn't just sort of some sort of fluff from a journalist. And I think most importantly, what makes me get up every morning is that I think with our products, we improve people's lives. I think a lot of magazines sometimes create this sort of unrealistic expectations of what we should be as people. But I think with running and cycling, I always like to believe that we are authentic and we represent the audience and the readers really well in a way that they are able to access us really easily. So that's kind of the mantra of the magazines.
And when you speak about a product and you speak about new running shoes, or you speak about inner soles, or you speak about gear for cycling, I mean, you speak from a position of knowledge. And as you said, you've got experts that come on board. And so it's not just puff pieces. It's not just things that you're throwing into the ether. You actually do quite a lot of research on it.
Yeah, I mean, our gear, as you mentioned, is a very important part of what we do on both magazines. Gear is a big part of running and cycling. Running in the old days, gear was just poly shorts and a vest, but nowadays it's, a huge amount of stuff, and, there's wearable tech and GPSs and the different sort of shoes. In our recent issue, we've done a whole feature on these new super shoes that have come through with the carbon foot plates, and and in cycling, the amount of gear that's available to be tested, we could probably fill 3 magazines.
Well, I mean, Willem keeps me busy telling me about all the stuff that he has to buy and the wheels, and it goes in the one ear and out the other, quite frankly. But yes, I mean, I know, and I think cycling has really boomed as a sport in South Africa, right? I mean, over the last 15, 20 years, there's been a huge uptake in cycling in South Africa.
Yeah, I mean, what's strange, well, not strange, what's interesting is to see the ebbs and flows of the popularity of these two pastimes over the last, as you say, 20 years, even the last 30 years, and how the evolution of it has changed. When I first joined Runner's World, running was very much dominated by the ultra scene. It was either the Comrades or the Two Oceans Ultra. But over the years, the market has really become a much more lifestyle, everything down from 21s. Now the most popular distance amongst our readers is 10 to 15 Ks. Whereas, 20 years ago, if you hadn't run the Comrades, you weren't a runner.
Yeah.
And in cycling, it's also starting to shift a bit in that people are, and I think maybe this is a result of what's happened with COVID and the lack of events, but people are starting to find their own adventures. They're not necessarily always going to do an event because events are expensive, whereas they realize they can get a bunch of mates together for a weekend and spend a third of the money and have an absolute great time on whatever trail they decide. So, cycling allows you to explore this beautiful country that we live in a way that you can't do in any other way. And we have, gravel bikes have opened that up. Mountain bikes allow us to do that. So, we have a very particular passion for those two sports in South Africa that is unique sometimes to the rest of the world, which makes it exciting in many ways.
No, absolutely. So we had an event a couple of weeks ago at the Cradle of Humankind where, we obviously were engaging with runners and with cyclists mainly. But I think one of the things that you pick up, and Willem, maybe you can come in here as well, is cycling not from a security point of view, because I think we'll get to that later, but is it a safe sport?
Listen, firstly, Mike, pleasure to be having the opportunity to be in this podcast with you. I'm an avid reader of your magazines. I find Runner's World packed with substance and information. It's a fantastic read and really useful. In terms of wearables, I read Under Armour is now issuing IoT devices that links with your device to measure strike rate and distance and foot angle and all these things. It's fantastic.
All these important things.
Very important, Leighton. To answer Leighton's question, cycling inherently before security aspects is not a safe sport. It's a very dangerous sport, especially if you look at road cycling, you're looking at big bunches. The further forward you move to the sharp end, the more dangerous, because it's high speed, it's competitive, it's fast cornering. The quality of our roads is a challenge. You may not see a pothole lurking in a bunch, and if one goes down, it's a domino effect.
Willem, excuse me, at the AA, we talk about road safety. And I think a lot of people get lost in the conversation, in terms of motor cars and in terms of motorbikes only. But for cyclists and for runners, when we talk about road safety, it includes them as well. It has to include them. And, a very important part of road safety is the actual surface of the road. And I find, and you could, because you've ridden a lot more than I have, but, the road surfaces aren't great in many of the areas that people are riding.
It's not, and especially after the recent rains, the roads are really not in good shape. I live out Northwest Way, and if you look at the Cradle and the routes heading there are plenty of potholes. Yeah, not as big a problem for mountain biking, but definitely for road racing, it is a big concern.
And do motorists give a damn about cyclists and runners?
Yeah, as you can imagine, that question is often posed to us, and I think a lot of people, there is a perception that the sport of cycling in particular is dangerous. I think there is some perspective needed in all of this. I don't know what the stats are, but I can imagine that they're fairly high, that the number of pedestrians that are knocked down by cars every year is a pretty high number.
35 to 40% of all fatalities are pedestrians, right?
Yeah, so if you put a moving petrol-powered vehicles and you put them up against humans, there is bound to be some areas where there's going to be some sort of incident. And I think in cycling, whenever a cyclist gets knocked down or killed or whatever happens, and it is tragic when it does happen, it's always highlighted massively, that cycling is somehow dangerous. And I think that percentage of cyclists out there on a Sunday ride here in Cape Town, and I imagine it's the same around the country. I ride on the road most of the time. There are lots of things you can do to prevent and lessen the risk of having a sort of contact with a car. But I don't believe, honestly, that there is some sort of, I think there are some cyclists that believe there's this kind of war between cars and bikes. I don't believe that. I think there are incidences that happen, and some of them are very unfortunate, but it is just a game where, if you put lots of cyclists on a road and you've got cars, sometimes there will be an accident. I don't think it is a catastrophic problem in South Africa, in all honesty.
Okay, it's not catastrophic, but are cyclists and runners taking responsibility for their safety on the road? Do you believe that the cycling community and the running community are taking responsibility for their safety, Willem, as somebody who's active in that field?
Yeah, I think they do. I think the cyclists that cycle all year round are very conscientious of safety. They do ride two abreast in areas where there isn't a shoulder on the road. They ride in single file. I do think from time to time, as we would classify, fun riders do get carried away, and they think they own the road, and they're having a chat and riding 3, 4, 5 abreast on a national road. I mean, those things are extremely dangerous. But people that cycle all year round, that's not seasonal, that wake up after winter to decide they want to ride again, with no criticism to the different levels of riding. But I think by and large, the average South African cyclist is very aware of.
They know how to
safety.
play the game.
They do. They definitely do. And a bicycle is a moving vehicle, although self-propelled. And once you get on that, you need to be alert, and your senses need to be activated, and you need to be aware that you may not be as visible, and that vehicles it's the law of unintended consequence. They may not expect to see on the side in an emergency lane. And accidents happen, as Mike says. But I concur with Mike. I don't think there's any resentment from the mass motoring population towards cyclists. And the South African population is an outdoors kind of culture. They enjoy being out. They like their sport. Through lockdown, if you look at that first time where we could get out again between 6 and 9, it looked like mass events. And I think people that never used to run before now started running because they just craved a bit of clean air and to get out and get away from a confined space. So yeah,
I mean, our message as the AA always, when we talk about road safety and when we often address motorists, is put the cell phone away, focus on the road ahead, make sure that you are attentive behind the wheel. If you're a passenger, do the same thing. And keep a lookout for everybody around you. And I think that that's a very important message. And what we try and do is instill a sense of respect amongst motorists for all other road users, whether they're pedestrians or people on motorbikes or people riding cycles. So it's a very important concept that I think we need to get across. So I'm actually quite buoyed by the fact that both you and Mike, who I think are very much involved in the sport of cycling and in running, make the point that cyclists and runners are actually quite attentive, and that they do care about road safety, which I think is a very important aspect of participating in that sport. But one of the things that I think does happen, and I know that it happens quite often in Cape Town, and it's happened, news reports happen in Gauteng and in other parts of the country, but cyclists, because of the gear that they're using and the expense of the equipment that they have, they often do become a victim of crime, and there are attacks on cyclists. I mean, Mike, you know about this as well. Is it becoming something that is picking up in your experience? Are you hearing more of it, or are people taking more cognizance of the fact that attacks do happen?
Yeah, I think that is, as I say, looking at the numbers and the crime stats, do we know how many people who are cyclists have been attacked? We don't really know that, but certainly my perception is that the number of attacks on cyclists has increased in the last couple of years. Just here in Cape Town, on Thursday morning, we went riding out towards Takai area, and we turned a little bit earlier than we normally do, and a group of cyclists were coming the other way, and they got pepper sprayed by a gang trying to take their bikes literally half a kilometer down the road. And we could easily have been one of those. If we carried on, we would have been the people attacked. And I think that we've lots of instances of people, in very built up suburban areas getting their bikes taken and violently taken away from them. So yes, I think there is a crime problem. We know that it's probably linked to a socioeconomic wider problem in South Africa. It's not aimed at bicycles in particular, but bicycles are a high net worth item, and many of them are part of sort of groups that get those bikes and ship them off to somewhere else in Africa for a fair amount of money, or take them to Cash Crusaders and sell them for R1,000 and that sort of thing, which we know happens. So yes, I think safety in terms of crime is something that cyclists need to be very aware of. There are lots of ways that you can really make sure that you don't make yourself susceptible by riding in groups, making sure that you don't go to areas that are high risk. And, just keeping in touch with cycling groups. I find that, if anybody that's a cyclist has probably got about 10 different WhatsApp groups that they're a member of. And cyclists are very good at sharing information about things that have happened. Somebody gets knocked down or somebody gets robbed, that just goes like wildfire to all those groups. So being part of the cycling community, I think, helps you become aware of where the danger areas are. And simple things like securing your bike when you're having a coffee. We've heard of instances where people have stopped at the coffee shop and their bikes get swiped while they're inside having their coffee. And just putting your helmet strap around your front wheel, something as simple as that can prevent somebody from grabbing and just riding off with your bike. So yeah, being aware of the fact that cyclists do get targeted, as anything with a high value does. And cyclists are often vulnerable because, they don't carry weapons with them, or, they're quite, it's difficult to fight off somebody when you're standing in cleats.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I was waiting for you to say they're a very passive bunch, because I know one very, very, very unpassive cyclist. But on that note, Willem, no, I kid, obviously. I mean, when we started talking about, a security solution, you came up and said, well, there is this community that would benefit greatly from a security solution that could protect them. So the AA has AA armed response, which is linked to the cell phone, and you've got a Bluetooth device that links to your cell phone as well. And if you've got a security situation, you can either activate it on your cell phone by pushing the panic button, or you can have a button that's linked to your cell phone. But you made the point, I think, really initially when we were developing a standalone button, that cyclists don't always travel with a cell phone. They don't always have that Bluetooth option available to them. And you suggested that we have the standalone option, and that developed over a period of time into the product that we have now called Rem-i Amica, right? And for you, that's a very key piece of equipment that a cyclist should have if they're out on the road.
Well, Leighton, mostly people do have phones with them, but luckily they have Garmin's, Polas, and the like. Within the cycling running community, if it's not on Strava, it didn't happen. So
yeah.
you need to record your rides and your records for those kudos. But allow me to step back just two phrases. I've been cycling for years. I've done 5K epics, and in 2019, I had the privilege of riding with my daughter. She was the youngest girl to ride the event at 18. I often wondered if I was being a responsible parent through that, but she got through it. It was fantastic. The problem was that we finished the sixth stage, and we were staying at a guest house at St. Larry's Pass Road. We got off the stage, long day, 8 hours of cycling, and we just wanted to go to dinner. And as we left the guest house, we went onto St. Larry's Pass Road, and as we turned onto the road, there was 10 or so youngsters lurking around. Next minute, they started barricading the road. They started burning tires and blocking the road and throwing stones in front of our car. And I realized we were in trouble, and 10 became 20, became 30. And I stopped the count. Next minute, they were throwing bricks at us, hitting the car, and I sped off, drove through the barricades, damaging the car, and got to the closest restaurant, phoned the police. And, unfortunately, the response was that they couldn't tend to our situation because they didn't have enough patrol vehicles. And we were stranded. We couldn't do anything to get back to our guest house because it was a massive mob causing a problem. We ended up phoning a local security company to provide armed escort to get back to our guest house, to vacate that and move down the road to find place that hour of the night at Gordon's Bay, and then proceed on the stage the next day. The point being is that, dating back then, I realized that we need to provide a secondary alternative solution to assist government police to spread their response. They're simply not getting there. And you know, what do you have at hand that's going to be the difference between life and death? So for the outdoors market, as Mike said earlier, people are wising up to having different experiences. I can attest to that. You know, we always look out for adventures. We had the privilege of cycling in France. We went from Provence from the French Alps to the Pyrenees, and just my daughter and I alone event, dreaming of riding summits like Alpe d'Huez, Mont Ventoux, and the like. And it's quite simple to do to create your own adventures. Similarly, from a local perspective, the advent of trail running has taken a lot of traction. And what happens now is trail runners are running in reserves, and before they know it, somebody's lurking behind a bush. They get apprehended, and ransom is demanded through e-wallet or whatever the case might be, threatened, and if they don't do that, they'll get shot or harmed. So we realized that we needed an alternative solution outside of the conventional telephone, because the first thing that would happen, they would go for your phone. It's a high value, high priced item. They'll steal it, take it off you. You can't communicate, and they will sell it for whatever they sell it. Whether it's 500 Rand to get them through the day, I don't know. But they're not going to get the value for the phone, for example. So what we came up with is a locally hosted through our own cloud services. The device that we now call the Rem-i Amica. So if you take it out of the pod, Mike, I don't know if you can see that. When you take it out of its pod, in comparison, this is an idea of the size to a telephone. When you charge your phone at night, you simply just pop this back into your pod. It charges seamlessly, and this can be utilized. It could be hung around your neck. It could be put around a belt. It could be tucked away in a school bag, in a car, whatever the case might be.
So for those who are not watching this but listening to us, it's a very small key ring, and it's about half the size of a computer mouse, and it has a clip on it that allows you to attach it to any set of keys that you have. There is a link that you can put around your neck if you'd like to, and it's essentially it's a black unit with a silver button in the middle, and the silver button in the middle is then depressed in the event of an emergency, and a signal is then sent to a certain place. And perhaps, Willem, you can just explain, where is that signal sent to and how is it activated?
So this is a bespoke designed AA product. What is different from this product to similar competing products in the market, we don't host via a Chinese platform. We host through a local cloud with local developers that make sure that the uptime on this GPS locate-based application is up and it works. We can troubleshoot. What we've done is we've linked this device to our existing armed response infrastructure. We have, through our partners, a network of 180 service providers nationwide, and it works exactly the same as what Uber would work. So if you call for Uber, the message would go out, and the closest Uber to you would come to service you. The security companies work on the same basis. As soon as the alert goes out, they'll see who the closest is. The minute you activate the panic, a call would go through this device. Now, remembering, this device is GSM-enabled, so if you have data roaming on this device, you could use this anywhere in the world. If you need to track and locate, for example, your luggage, you could ping this, go through a URL, and you could locate this through maps, and you could locate the device. For local-based services, you can activate this using it for medical response, for armed response, or it could simply be a message that goes to your loved one or somebody whose number is loaded on you. There's 3 numbers you can load, and that person would know that an alert has been sent. That person can go to the device on a web link to locate this device.
And they get an SMS.
They get an SMS.
Right.
Once they do that, they could find this device if you allow them to, in terms of protection of privacy. Nobody would access the device unless you allow them to. And from that, the device could be located and assistance could be given.
So let's just take it one step back. I live in Johannesburg, but I'm doing a run in Pretoria. And I'm running and there's an incident and I push the button. The closest security provider in Pretoria to my location is going to be alerted and activated. A call gets sent to them and they are dispatched to come and help me.
Absolutely. So it's broken down geographically between high response areas and low response areas. Clearly, if you have an incident in Johannesburg, Cape Town, Durban, or Pretoria, the response time would be far quicker. If something happens to you in Katu or Pofadder, clearly it's going to be a different situation. The infrastructure is just different. But in terms of the population density, we've got 85% covered that you could have an incredibly fast response time, whether you're running towards, if you're riding or going towards the mast, or you're riding at Turkine or at Wolverspruit or wherever you go to, the response time would be incredibly fast.
If I was on a golf course and I had an incident, I could push the button as well. I mean, it's not only for runners and cyclists. I mean, it could be for anybody doing any kind of sport. You could use it wherever you are.
Listen, anywhere for any event in golfing, it happens if a golf ball hits you. Even people, if you have this and you need emergency services, you could hit that wherever you are.
Okay.
And you could have emergency services attend to you very quickly. The other thing about this is it's a digital activation. With the press of a button, you activate it. All you need to make sure is that you have data on your data SIM and that it's charged. The other nice thing about this is it comes with a pouch that you could put this into. So typically for runners, you could slide this into your pouch, take off your keyring, and this could go around your arm, or wherever you would like to put this, and you could go for it. So
again, for those who are not watching this, there is a pouch that actually fits that the actual Rem-i Amica unit fits into. It has a hole in the front, and the panic button is quite visible there, and this can fit on your bicycle or on your arm or wherever you need it to be, right? And this I mean, besides your personal experience, Willem, this is in response to, as Mike was saying, a growing issue, of security around certain activities that we perform in South Africa. So this is obviously one of the answers to providing that type of security. I mean, Mike, when you look at a product like this, I mean, it's sad that you have to actually provide a product like this, but security when you're on the road, or when you're doing something that you love to do, like running or cycling or doing whatever, it has become one of those essential things as South Africans we need to take care of, right?
Yeah, I think what impresses me most about the product, and just full disclosure, I haven't seen it until I can see it on the screen now, and you've described it very well. I think a lot of the products are linked to phones, and you're right. The first thing that gets taken away from you in that situation is a phone. And people sometimes say, well, they'll carry a knife or a gun. All those things are very impractical at that time. And I think what really makes that useful is that it's easy to just sort of disguise in your back pocket or wherever it is, and you can carry it reasonably easily with you. So I really am quite fascinated to. I hope you're going to send me a test model, because I think it's something that I think would work really well in South Africa. And it's peace of mind. It's not just about prevention. It's peace of mind for your loved ones that are, maybe worried about you going out on a ride or a run. If they know that they have a device that can keep you safe, that they feel a bit happier about you going out. And, for yourself, if something happens, you've got a little bit of backup. So,
and I think at the end,
that's the benefit.
Yeah. And I mean, I think you really touched on a very important point there. When we talk about, road safety, we've often get asked a lot about hijacking and what to do in the situation. And, we always do the usual things where we say to people, show your hands, open the door from the outside. And, but I think the overriding piece of information we give to people is let the car go. Let the vehicle go, let the bicycle go, let your gear go, let your cell phone go if you need to, because your life isn't, your life is more important than those possessions. But the benefit of this unit is that it's really compact and it fits really well on your arm. It can be put in your pocket. It can be something, like we said, hung around your neck. So you can let everything go, but you can still keep your hands on this type of thing.
No, Leighton, I'm a father, and, we never stop worrying about our kids and our family. Another practical example is, for example, if you have somebody taking part in an event, let's say, for example, we had the South African Road Cycling Championships happening in Swellendam about 4 weekends ago. It's a 140-kilometer course, and, it's racing at the sharp end, and you're wondering where is she? How's she tracking in terms of racing? Is she safe? If you have a device like this, pop it in the back of a cycling jersey, and I can sit in the comfort of my car on my laptop while getting some work done in between, and I can track her exactly to see exactly where she is. This device not only can tell you where the person is, it will tell you at what speed the person is going as well. So if you activate that, you could track live at what velocity that thing's moving. So think of other events. If you're taking a part in a trail running event for as long as there's signal, or in one of the fantastic events like the Cape Town Cycle Tour or the Ride Joburg event, how wonderful would it be for somebody to be able to track their loved ones to see where they're on, whether they're safe and whether they're moving. And it's got an accelerometer in. So in the event that you have a sudden stop or impact, it would immediately send an alert.
Right.
So at least you know if something happens, you'd be the first to know. You don't need to wait. It would literally be like shadowing somebody as they go, as it takes place.
Brilliant. Yeah.
You'd be the first to know, and you'll get an alert, and you'd know that button would not. It's not a toy. It wouldn't get pressed unless there's a significant issue. So when you get that alert, heaven forbid, you do know. It's a matter of urgency.
And the button has to be depressed for 2 or 3 seconds. I mean, if I were to push it just once for a second, nothing's going to happen. So, and that prevents, that kind of pocket dial situation where you push it by mistake. You mentioned earlier, and I think it's worth mentioning because you've spoken a lot now about, you're able to track somebody with it and you're going to get useful information. It's a very personal device because the people who are going to use it are persons that you're intimately involved with them. They're your family members. So it's not something that is going to be, breaking any legal boundaries in terms of, information that you're getting from that person. Your daughter is going to give you permission to put this unit on her bike or to have it on her arm, and she knows that you're going to track her. So there won't be a legal issue around that. And I think that that's a very important point to make because some people may be concerned about that. But the unit itself, Willem, I mean, from a cycling perspective, it's not a big piece of gear.
No, so for any cyclist, anything that weighs more than 100 grams is a big problem. So cyclists go through an inordinate amount of pain to lighten the bikes, and it's the one thing where the less you have, the more it costs. Yeah, a bizarre thing. So to put all the cyclists at ease, I don't think this is more than 100 grams. So it's one sip of water less, Instead of filling your bottle, maybe just leave a little margin, and you'd be fine.
And Mike, this could really be the difference at the end of the day between life and death. I mean, it could. I'm not being dramatic. It could really boil down to that.
Yeah, I think, after that situation when, touch wood, I've never had an incident where I've been attacked, but I know people who have, and I think, having that ability to be able to get some help, because sometimes those attacks can last a long time, at least it prevents somebody from being kidnapped and an extended sort of trauma. If somebody's just grabbing your bike and you're running away, or if they do try and hurt you and you get stabbed or shot or injured or something along that lines, at least you've got access to some sort of help straight away. Yeah. And as you said right at the start, it's not the kind of thing that we didn't necessarily want to have to carry with us, but it is a reality in South Africa. And as I said earlier, there's just a bit of peace of mind with a product like this, from what I can see.
If you are a responsible, enthusiast, whether it's cycling or whether it's running or whether you're participating in other outdoor activities, you're going to make sure that you've got the right equipment with you. You're going to make sure that you've got the right safety gear on. And I think that, hopefully in time, the Rem-i Amica button, and Willem, I'm going to show this for those of you who are not watching again, but it comes in a very, pretty yellow box, and it's got the logo on it. But this will become one of those essential pieces of equipment that you need to have.
Yeah, Mike Layton, keep in mind, for more recreational type riders, I'll say that for the mass population that goes out to have a fun event, do the 10, 20, 30K at a mountain bike event, for example, most of those riders have a bike pouch. I say tongue-in-cheek because the guys racing at the front end they'd barely have a bottle. They wouldn't have a camelback because weight would be everything and speed would be everything. And it works because they take far less to finish the course than
Yeah.
So take their time, multiply 2 would be the average other rider's time, more or less.
Times 10.
If that's fair to say.
Yeah.
And as we're getting late on his bike, yeah. But the point is, I mean, if you have this device tucked away in your bike bag or your bike pouch, or you're tied under your seat, for example, this is live. For as long as it's there, you can track your bike. So if something happens, if you've had your coffee and you get out and your bike's gone, you have that first half-hour window to know exactly where your bike's gone. You'll have 100% more chance than what you would have had otherwise. We did the panorama tour, and we went to race briefing. By the time we came back from race briefing, 3 Pinarello Dogma bikes had been stolen off a car, but they didn't steal the bicycles. They took the whole bike rack.
Wow.
That's how brazen they are. We went to a Cradle Moon triathlon event not so long ago, and these perpetrators drive in with bike racks. The bikes got racks, dressed in bike gear. They literally drove out with the bikes. They took 5 bicycles in the space of 10 minutes. So if you had something like this on a bike pouch or a triathlon bag, which is a better chance of having it, you have a chance.
So perpetrators are being innovative, and that requires an innovative solution to deal with them.
Look. Obviously, they'll catch on to this. It will be a question of time. They'll catch on to it. But there's ways and means that we can manage that. Yeah. And although not ready, we're all looking at devices, talking to the bicycle OEMs to have this embedded in the bike frames. On different connectivity networks, perhaps not a GSM solution, but at least you'd have a chance to recover that.
But in the interim, this is a good solution. It provides you with that security, and it's a level of support that you're not going to get if you don't have this device.
Absolutely. And just to put everybody at ease in terms of POPI Act and protection of privacy, the baseline regarding the Act really is consent.
Yes.
So unless people have consent to access your location and to know where you are, it would not be available.
And importantly, the information is yours.
Correct.
You know, you're not sharing it with anybody. There's nobody that's going to come and have a look at it. It's your information. And I know, from an AA perspective, owning the information is always one of those critical aspects that we always harp on.
Leighton, and just to reiterate what we're very proud of, although the device is an imported product, the software is proudly South African. That is licensed in South Africa, developed by South Africans on a South African platform. We couldn't, we have aspirations of having 1 million plus of these devices deployed nationwide in time, and we simply can't allow the support platform not to be locally based and locally supported. So we can provide assurance that that uptime on this device would be guaranteed.
It's going to work.
And with our partner network. And it's really a fantastic IoT digitally aggregated product that we're happy to put the AA's name to. It's a 91-year-old brand. And it all came from caring about the community. We're a non-profit organization. This is not about, we will be selling these devices at cost. And all we're asking from the subscribers is to pay the subscription fee, which is 35 Rand a month. It's really nothing. Get a data SIM, buy the data. The cost of the device is going to be less than 2,000 Rand to the public. It's significantly cheap in terms of tech. If you look at what it's going to cost you, if you buy a Garmin, Polar, Sunto, whatever you buy, you're not going to buy that for 2,000 Rand, for example.
Yeah.
So I think it's a small investment to make for a lot of value.
Good.
And then you subscribe to the service and you're away. It works on the bike, off the bike, in the car, at home, wherever you are. This thing will work.
Excellent. Well, Willem, thank you very much from that. Let me clear that screen. Mike, thank you very much for your time. I think you've given us some useful insights. I don't think that cyclists or runners are bad people. There may be 1 or 2 of them that need an extra bit of coffee in the morning. Yeah, and I'll bring Willem into the picture as well, our mascot. But thank you very much, Mike, and good luck with the magazine. Thanks so much for your insights. And I think we'll certainly make sure that we get something down to you when we have more, so you guys can give it a test and have a look at it, and perhaps let your readers know a little bit more about it. But thank you very much for your time, Mike. I really appreciate it. And Willem, thank you very much for your insights as well. Great having both of you on. That's the end of this episode of AA Connect. As I said at the beginning of the show, you can catch us on all social media platforms, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn, or you can visit our website at www.aa.co.za. And Runner's World magazine and Bicycling magazine are also available on the internet. If you just do a search for any one of those, you will find those. Thanks again. Until next time.